This happened one summer 2 years ago. My boyfriend Jack and I drove to a beach town for vacation. After staying at a fairly expensive local in the first day, we decided to just sleep in the free parking lot by the beach the next night to save money and be able to go to the beach first thing in the morning. We played at the beach the whole day. At around 10 p.m. that night, we returned to the parking lot, where only a few cars remained, looking desolate. I instinctively checked the time on my phone. It was past 10 p.m., the night darkening, the entire parking lot dim, with only a few faint yellow street lamps emitting weak light. Jack parked the car in a relatively concealed corner and turned off the engine. We sat in the car, munching on some fast food we bought, chatting about what we'd seen and heard at the beach that day. Gradually, we both felt a little sleepy. So we decided to sleep early and be full of energy for the beach tomorrow. Jack said he could sleep in the front seat, while I slept in the back seat alone. Just as I lay down, about to fall asleep, a crisp knocking sound suddenly broke the stillness of the night. I jolted awake, my heart instantly beating rapidly. A few seconds later, another clearer knocking sound came, seemingly from right outside our car door. I nudged Jack, who was sound asleep, and whispered that it sounded like someone was near our car outside. Jack groggily sat up, turned on the interior light and checked around, then said it was probably just my imagination and told me to go back to sleep. Right then, as we lay back down, a third even clearer knocking sounded, this time accompanied by a slight metallic twisting noise. My heart pounding like drums, I woke up again in disbelief, and urgently told Jack, "There's definitely someone outside the car. Go check it out." This time Jack was a little nervous too. He nodded, carefully opened the car door, and stuck his head out to look around. There was nobody outside, only the sparse starlight falling on the vacant parking lot. Jack sat back down relieved, saying it was probably just a stray cat or dog bumping into our car earlier. Although I was still somewhat concerned, I gradually calmed down too. Jack locked the car door, and we continued chatting for a bit sitting in the car. Just as we were preparing to sleep again, this time a short yet clear knocking sounded. The knocks came from the car window glass, right next to me. I shuddered, truly feeling a sense of danger nearing. Jack's face also turned serious. He warned me not to act rashly, and quietly took out a steel rod for self-defense from the car. The two of us waited silently, our heartbeats thumping together. After a few minutes, everything returned to calm again. Jack carefully pushed the car door open. This time, the instant the door opened, a filthy, disheveled middle-aged man appeared by our car. In the night, the man stared straight at us, the corners of his mouth seeming to be mumbling something. Jack yelled, "What are you doing?" pointing the steel rod at him. The man was startled, turned and ran a few steps, turned back and grinned creepily at us, then disappeared into the night. Jack and I looked at each other, both breaking into cold sweat. Jack quickly locked the car door and started the engine. Just as we began moving to exit the parking spot, I suddenly saw two figures appear not far ahead. They stood at the only exit, seeming to be blocking our way. Jack stopped the car. "There are two more people at the exit," I said in terror. Jack slammed the brakes, the car stopped. We hesitated whether to reverse, when just then, those two figures slowly started walking towards us. "Damn it, hold on tight," Jack yelled, hitting the gas and speeding to the other side of the parking lot. I kept anxiously looking in the rearview mirror, scared those creepy figures would catch up to our car. Jack raced ahead, and finally we escaped from the other side of the parking lot. This horrifying experience made me never dare to again sleep overnight in an unfamiliar parking lot. In the end, we still went to a nearby motel, which, although costing more money, felt so much safer by comparison. It was a rainy night when I drove to a suburban hotel for a college reunion that I hadn't attended in years. Since it was the weekend, the parking lot around the hotel was extremely crowded. I drove around for a while before finding a secluded, dim corner to park my car. The reunion was lively as I chatted and laughed with old friends I hadn't seen in years. By the time we bid farewell, it was past midnight and I was the only car left in the parking lot. My friends expressed concern about a woman alone in a parking lot so late, but I laughed it off saying I'd be fine. As I took out my car keys preparing to drive home, I suddenly felt a sense of unease. It was dead quiet around me, with only the sound of raindrops hitting the concrete. I quickened my pace getting into the car when I heard urgent tapping coming from outside the car door. I tensed up, cautiously looking around, but saw nothing. Just as I relaxed to start the car, the tapping sounded again, now coming from the other side of my window. I nervously locked the doors, but footsteps kept approaching, and I felt unprecedented dread. Just as they came within a few steps of me, the footsteps suddenly stopped. I stared wide-eyed around me, but saw nothing. Then, a rough hand fiercely slapped my car window and I screamed, hitting the gas pedal and speeding toward the exit. Just then, a man rushed out from the side blocking my way. I shrieked, violently turning the wheel to head the opposite way. Two thugs immediately chased after me. I frantically raced ahead, but the parking lot exit was several hundred feet away and I saw no other cars. Just then, a black van suddenly cut me off at a turn ahead, stopping me in my tracks. I slammed the brakes to avoid crashing. Before my car even stopped, the van doors opened and two burly men in black lunged toward me. They bashed open my door and I screamed, kicking my legs, but was quickly overpowered. I struggled desperately, screaming for help, when one thug mercilessly punched me in the gut. The pain made me double over and I thought I was done for. Just then, a car's headlights beamed into the parking lot and a passerby heard my screams, saving my life. Seeing this, the thugs jumped into the van and sped off. The kind stranger saw I was hurt and took me to a hospital. I filed a police report, but they haven't caught the gang yet. I remained terrified, grateful that the passerby showed up when he did. But the experience left deep psychological scars. I still have nightmares of being chased and killed, and don't dare go out alone at night or stay in an unfamiliar parking lot, fearing I'll encounter those thugs again. I now take self-defense classes to protect myself better, and watch out for friends' safety too. That feeling of helpless despair still brings endless horror whenever I recall that night. I hope time will fade the awful memory, but it seems permanently etched in my mind. I know I must slowly emerge from this shadow to regain confidence in life. Until then, the nightmares and fear will haunt me, but I will bravely confront them. My name is John, I'm 28 years old, and I'm a programmer. I'm an introverted person and not great at socializing. After graduating from college, I started working at an internet company and have been there since. My daily life is simple, just going home alone after work every day. This happened 3 years ago. At that time, our team was working overtime to fix bugs and meet an important project deadline. That day, I was also working late in the office until 10 p.m. My coworkers had already left, so I took the elevator down to the basement parking garage alone, ready to drive home to my apartment downtown. The night was deep, the whole parking garage empty except for one lone light, looking desolate. My footsteps echoed on the cement ground, keys jangling. I got in my car, started the engine. Just as I was about to drive away, a sudden, huge banging sound came, and my car door was violently struck, the car shaking in response. I was startled, vigilantly checking around me, but there was no one. I thought it was just my nerves making me hear things. Just as I was about to drive away, another powerful, heavy blow landed, leaving a slight dent in my car door. My whole body went cold. I hurriedly hit the lock button, my hands trembling unconsciously. Only then did I notice that first strike was in the blind spot of my car door, which I didn't check at the time. I stared wide-eyed into the darkness, trying to figure out who was attacking my car, but it was as if my car was completely enveloped in the parking garage's shadows. Just as I hesitated whether to start driving, a huge boom suddenly sounded on my car window. I turned my head in fright. A haggard-looking man was violently pounding on my window, his eyes giving me the creeps. I screamed, losing control of the car as it sped straight ahead, severely crashing into the cement barricade in front. My forehead slammed heavily into the steering wheel, blood streaming out. Just then, another man slowly walked out from the shadows in front of my car, arrogantly standing in front of me, blocking my way. His whole body emanated a terrifying aura, slowly approaching my trapped car. I was extremely afraid, but there was no way to escape. Just when I was in despair, the sound of a police siren suddenly cut through the deathly silence. I hurriedly rolled down my window calling for help. It turned out a security guard on patrol noticed something wrong and came to check. He chased away the two thugs, and finding me injured, quickly called the ambulance. I was urgently sent to the hospital for treatment. I stayed in the hospital for one night. The next day, the police came to ask about the situation. They said they would increase parking garage security, and advised me to not go out alone or work overtime too late recently. This sudden incident cast a shadow over my life. I decided to find a part-time day job, avoiding returning home late at night from now on. Whenever I recall that terrifying experience, I still feel residual fear. It reminds me to always stay alert, in order to avoid all kinds of potential dangers in life.